As Norm said, I have done this presentation before, but because of the way Earl presented it in the meeting announcement, I kind of would like to tweak it a little bit. 3 years ago, my wife said to me, I want to find something out about my family. And I said, all right, that sounds cool. Let's do something. She knew a few names. She had some stuff from her grandmother, from her aunts and uncles. And I had the start of a family tree from my grandmother on her side of the family, but not anything on my father's side of the family. And it is through my father that I became a member of this organization. So I started thinking, why isn't there anything about Dad's family? Where'd they go? What was going on? And then it started to gel. My father's father died in the flu epidemic in 1918. My father was 3 years old. He never knew his father. He never knew his grandfather or great-grandfathers or any of that. So I had to start from scratch from that. I knew my grandfather's name. I knew when he was born. And I knew where he was buried and when he died. So figured, well, let's try this Ancestry.com thing. See what it's all about. I put in Hiram D. Morgan, date of death October 1918. And sure enough, he comes up in a census. Who was there with him but his father and his mother? George Washington Morgan and Rosanna Morgan. So I took the next step. Let's look up George Washington. And that was the first time that I was exposed to the name of Bodo, because George Washington's father was Bodo Morgan. So I kept looking, kept digging. Found out that Bodo's father was Jonathan. And that Jonathan had married a young lady by the name of Otto. Her grandfather was Bodo Otto, who is my Revolutionary War patriot. So it all started with my wife. Now what's weird is we've built a tree on Ancestry.com. Yeah, about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people on it, something like that. Most of them are on my side. She has brick walls on everything that she has tried to do. So we're trying to find some help for her because we really just can't get it on the electronic media. So that's sort of my introduction, and I'm going to try and weave some of my uses of the internet into this presentation. And as Norm said, we want to make this a discussion. It's going to be really boring if you listen to me for 15 or 20 minutes. So I'm sure you've all, at one time or another, been to Ancestry.com. But there are some other places you can go to look up information. A couple that I have used is Family Search. What's nice about that is it's free. But they don't have everything that Ancestry has. Ancestry doesn't have everything that you'll find in Family Search. A lot of times we have found the actual documents in Family Search that Ancestry only has as an index. So you have to be, kind of having multiple tabs open while you're playing around. There's also Fold 3, which I hear is very good for military. I have not been able to find or really get any benefit out of Fold 3. Now, other people tell me that it's very, very good for getting records for military service from their ancestors. Another one that I like is called Genealogy Bank. It's newspapers. Now, Ancestry has a new product that they're pushing and selling very hard called newspapers.com. Genealogy Bank has sort of beat them to the punch. And the reason I like it so much is it has the Bridgeton Evening News in it. Now my family is from the Bridgeton, Salem, Gloucester County area. A lot of that area is covered by the Bridgeton Evening News, and I can put in my ancestor names, and I can find out such great things as my great-grandmother Rosanna broke her arm falling off a table. Now you go, why was she on the table? You know, she's doing a little dancing up here or what? She was wallpapering the ceiling. That news made it into the Bridgeton Evening News. So these are the kind of things that you can find in the newspapers that you won't find on Ancestry.com. You'll also find obituaries. Years ago, obituaries weren't what they are today. There's a little blurb. It basically says, Joe Smith died. His funeral is going to be at his house on Sunday at 2 o'clock, and from there he will be taken to the cemetery. And that's all they had. It didn't give the whole list of survivors, what they did, what the organizations were, unless they were very, very rich. But now for the rest of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to just mainly focus on Ancestry.com. But there are a couple things that I remind people all the time when I talk to them and they ask me for pointers on doing genealogical research. Now, I'm not an expert, believe me. I just kind of play around with this. But, number one, not all records are online. You may know in your heart that it should be online. It may not be there. And it's not there because it just either hasn't gotten done yet or isn't going to be done. The other thing, and Norm mentioned this briefly in his very generous introduction, some of the data that's online isn't right. If you look at other people's family trees on Ancestry.com, you'll see ridiculous marriages, associations. You'll have children being born 10 years after the mother died. You'll have 6 kids. 3 of them all have the same name, but with different birth years. So you've got to do a lot of common sense thinking. The way Ancestry gets its data digitalized is, it shouldn't be surprising, but it was when I found out. They export the documents overseas to a third world nation, where the items are digitized at about 2 cents an item. They have a tendency to make a lot of mistakes because you know how hard it is when you're looking at one of those old census. Is that a C or a G? The old documents where S's were F's, those kind of things. You're dealing with somebody who is trying to interpret that, who does not speak English as their main language. So they are interpreting these documents, then they're entering it into the computer. We know everybody makes typos. And they're doing a lot of clicking and dragging. I found some stuff on my family in the 1930 census. Now, like I said, my family's from Bridgeton. The census was saying they were living in Commercial Township, which is close to Bridgeton, but it's not Bridgeton. When you went and looked at the document itself, it sure enough says Bridgeton right on it. What the person who was doing the digitizing had done was they were using an old form, they just forgot to change the name of the form. So everybody on that census that lived in Bridgeton is on Ancestry.com as living in Commercial Township. And as you save the documents to your tree, you have to go in and manually change that information. Searching on Ancestry, this is your basic search form. Put in a name, any other information. I have found that in Ancestry, the best thing you can have for somebody is a birth year. You can do plus or minus 5 or 10, but if you do not put in a birth year, you are going to get results that are just unbelievable in number. You're just not going to be able to deal with them. So do your best to include some sort of a birth year. Where they lived is always a good thing to fill in. They have some other things that you can include in your search. You can use keywords. If you know where they died, that's always a good thing, because a lot of times that will get you to find a grave. There's a lot of people that do find a grave. They're not related to the people that they make these find a grave memorials up for. They just like to go to cemeteries and take pictures of tombstones and find out about people. So if you know where they're buried, know where they died, those types of things, it can help get you started. You can also, in Ancestry, and I like this feature, you can do a search. You can do all of their various collections, or you can just pick what you're looking for. If you do all, you may get, I've gotten as many as 1 million possible matches. You know that's just useless. But if you know you're looking for a something to do with immigration, you can just search that collection, and it'll reduce the number of hits that you're going to get. So that does really help cut down. And then when you get your results, like somebody did a search and they got 316,000 possible results. Now you're going to be there forever. But Ancestry is nice enough to tell you that if you're looking for census or voter registration, these are the records that are out there. So you just went from 316,000 down to, if you know you're looking for someone in the 1910 census, you've got 1,812 records. A little easier to deal with, still not the best. Remember too, the 1890 census doesn't exist, so don't go looking for it. It was burned up in a fire. About 25% of it survived, but not all of it is readable. This is one of the new features in the new Ancestry. They made a whole change in the way that the program and everything worked, probably 6 months ago. When it came out, I basically hated it. It was terrible. They have fixed it, but this was the one feature that I liked, because when you're doing your search, if you know you want specifically Joan McAvoy, slide these bars all the way over and hit update. And it will eliminate, for the most part, anyone that's not named Joan McAvoy. Now I say for the most part because for some reason you'll get some stupid, some Johns are going to slip in there. I don't know why, but they do. This one, you have to be careful. If you slide this one all the way over to exact, and you would put in Millville, Cumberland County, New Jersey, and it's not that way on the record, you're going to get no hits. It's just going to wipe it right out. So you have to be careful with that stuff. But if you're kind of trying to trim it down, you think you've got the right person, or you think you've got the right document, this is one way that you can go in and see if you're on the right path. You can also narrow it down this way, and I mentioned this before. When you do your search, you can use categories. This tells you all of the categories that have results. In that 316,000 that was on the other slide, there were 5,000 plus in census and voter lists. But that's a lot easier than looking through 316,000. So you can manage what it is you're doing by going to a specific category that you want to look into. These are fun. Schools and directories. There's a lot of yearbooks out there with photos, and they are fun. I have a cousin who is 15 years older than I am.
Yeah, the Historical Society, so you know, just got a an inquiry in 2 weeks ago from a company in Texas that is digitalizing high school yearbooks. And they've digitalized probably a couple dozen high schools, mainly in North Jersey, and one's in this state. But they're asking us to send the yearbooks that we have to digitalize them. And for that, they, of course, give us free access to that. But I think you're going to see a lot more in that area coming out because they're marketing it very heavily.
I have a cousin, she's 15 years older than I am. And we're pretty close. She's an only child, I'm an only child, so we get along real well. She went to Oberlin College in Ohio. Her yearbook was on Ancestry.com. I now have a picture of her when she graduated college. So it was kind of neat. I sent her the picture. I said, "Is this really you?" She said, "Where did you find this?" And she said, I was hoping that photo had been burned.
It's out there forever.
It is. I have an aunt. I have her high school yearbook was put on Ancestry, and I could get her picture out of that. And she remembered her photo also. Once you get to a document, they allow you to take your mouse and just hover your pointer over that, and it'll bring up the actual document itself. It's basically impossible to read it, but it'll let you know whether or not there is a document out there. That's the thing that's very important, because a lot of times Ancestry works off of indexes, and all that you get is what they have digitized. You can't really go back and check. But when you can go look at the original document, you can find out other bits of information too. So
you can see neighbors and stuff.
you can see neighbors.
Things putting together because of that. That's what I found in the census stuff.
Yeah, I've been looking for the father of my great-great-grandmother. Her last name was Ayers and lived in Fairfield Township in Cumberland County. She married a gentleman by the name of Buckley Bowen. Well, in the 1830 census, Buckley Bowen had one female who was of the right age, because remember in 1830 it's just the hash marks. There's a female and Buckley, both the right age, living alongside of an Alexander Ayers. Don't know that that's her father, but I'm thinking there's a pretty good chance that they got married and Pop set them up next door on the farm. So sometimes you also, as you're doing this, you have to remember you're a detective and you're an auditor. You're trying to find the information, and as an auditor, you're questioning everything. You don't just accept it for face value.
Now, is there a possibility on that particular one to get a copy of that document
Yes.
and expand it so you can read it?
Oh, yes.
Once you
Okay.
click on, if you click on it, you get this kind of a summary. This is what that person in the third world country has digitized. If you want to go look at the document, just click on that. And it will open the document right up. You can print the document. On the census, they only do certain columns. You may want to go look and see what kind of land that they have. How much did they make? There's incomes on there. There are columns that are in the census that don't get included in the standard digitized format.
Like the ones you want.
Yes. Yep. But I always tell people, if you can get to that original, go look at it. Because like Ben said, you got to find neighbors. And it may be family members. You're going to find that, wait a minute, why is Joe Smith living with my family? Oh, he worked on the farm. Or he was a lodger or a boarder. The other thing that I learned from going to an Ancestry session up in Philadelphia, use the right click when you go to open that up. Because if you left click on this and you decide, it's not what I really want, and you hit the back button, you go all the way back to the listing of documents. If you right click, you'll get a drop down screen that says open in new tab. Click on that. This document opens up in a separate tab. When you're done looking at it, close the tab. And it takes you right back to that screen. So it saves a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of frustration. I was going crazy with Ancestry because I was looking at things, close them, you got to go back, then you got to sort through. Now, where was I? What was the document? Just right click on it. I use the right click now 99% of the time. Every now and then I'll still forget and do it the other way, but now you can. Everybody that does genealogical work always says start with what you know. Start down at the bottom of the tree. You know your name, you know your siblings' names, mom, dad, and work up. So they say start your searches from your tree. Well, if you're going to use Ancestry, building your tree is a good way to do it. The more information you can put in when you do your search setup, the less you're going to have to go looking through ridiculous documents. You're going to get tons of them, I can guarantee you. One of the things you always have to keep thinking about is they will give you documents, but is it the right document for the right time? Is this the period of time that you are doing your research in?
What I found in the census is, as I was tracking back from the 1940, 1930, 1940, 10-year increments, if I was finding the guy's age was right in 1900 and 1910, he was same guy showing up 10 years later at the right age, even though the names around him were different, because now maybe he's married and he's the head of the household.
Well, not only that, the other thing with Ancestry, when we go back that far, is people came around knocking on the door. If nobody answered the door, and the neighbors answered, they would ask the neighbor who lives there. And if the neighbor said, well, yeah, I think the kid's name is Dick, and he's 14 years old, in that census, the kid's name is Dick, and he's 14 years old.
And that, or if they were Irish and they were giving them an answer, the whole thing could change around because of the dialects.
And
Depending
it
on
could
what
be
they gave.
they were talking to the father rather than the mother. So age in the census is sort of, it's a guess. My wife has one of her relatives is in the census twice. Once in Egg Harbor Township, and on the same exact day in Atlantic City.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them.
Because the husband was at home and they came knocking on the door. Mom was over on the beach with the kids or in Atlantic City visiting relatives. When they knocked on that door, they all got reported at that residence on that day. So even the census data, you have to be suspect, and what's the real truth? We may never really know.
They also didn't get 100% of the people.
Right.
They still don't.
Just because they're not there doesn't mean they weren't.
And in was it 1870, they had to recount. In Philadelphia, there are two censuses for 1870. The renumeration is the second one. It only is a listing of names and birth and ages. It doesn't go into all of the other detail. And in my wife's family, there's a child in the family that is in the original 1870 census. She's not there in the renumeration. and never appears again. So the possibility is she died between that period of time. So, now if you really hit brick walls, there are always experts that you can hire. Ancestry makes services available, or you can go out on your own. There's a lady in Trenton. If you need something from the state archives, Ann Bolt is her name. She is absolutely wonderful. You send her an email telling her what you're looking for, she'll get back to you, let you know how she made out, and in about a week you'll have your documents. She is absolutely the best thing going up there. It saves you the time of going up to the state archives. This is something that has been in Ancestry for a while. Wild cards. If you don't know exactly how a name is spelled, you can use one of these wild cards, either an asterisk or a question mark, depending upon how much you actually know, to give you, a fairly good broad base of hits. So you have to set them up properly. I'm not going to go try to read all of that for you, but it does work pretty well. This one is big. Here it says the first or last character has to be a non-wild card. So if you were, let's say you were looking for Hanson, and you weren't sure if it was son or sen, you put in H-A-N and an asterisk, it'll go through and it'll look for all of them. If you use the question mark, is for one letter only. So if you're just trying to figure out if the name is one letter off, you can use the question mark. I told you about my ancestors' Sayers. Apparently every other day was Sayer or Sayers. Some people it was Sears. It was depending upon how you pronounced it or your country of origin. And I've been doing the work for the Historical Society for the 3rd Battalion. And I went through the Stryker book and I pulled out every soldier that was listed as from Gloucester County being in the 3rd Battalion. If they just said Gloucester County, I put them on my list too. And now Norm has given me payroll records from the 3rd Battalion, and I'm going through trying to match up the payroll with what was in Stryker. And you have to be very good at phonetics. There were 3 gentlemen that were in the 3rd Battalion. Their last name was Ayres, A-Y-R-E-S. On the payroll record, they're Ayres, E-Y-E-R-S. They're the same people because the first names match everything else. So you have to keep really an open mind.
Yeah, with regard to spelling, spelling was not standardized with regard to names and other things in Great Britain until the time of the American Revolution. And so things were spelled phonetically, so it's not unusual to find 4 manuscripts of copies of manuscripts, say, that were made, copies were made in the late 1700s, and have a name of a place spelled in 4 different ways. In the United States, standardization started after the Revolution with regard to place names, and it only at about 1850 do you start to get enough literacy in the U.S. Because remember, the Puritans and our early ancestors were highly literate. By the time you get to about 1730 or 1740, literacy drops way down in the U.S. And it really doesn't start to pick up until after 1800 again. And so you have this period of time where Egg Harbor is Egg Harbor with a H-A-B-O-U-R, it's Egg Harbor Township, it's Great Egg Harbor, it's all these names. And the same with people's names. They spelled them phonetically. And that was perfectly acceptable at that time of It wasn't the same standard that we have today.
You got Summers as SOMER,
Some, two M's.
SOMM,
Yep.
SUM.
Yep. And location. You also have to be good on geography. Because, and Norm mentioned the two of them that are interchanged all the time, Egg Harbor City and Egg Harbor Township.
It was no Egg Harbor City for a long time.
For a long time,
But they
yeah.
keep putting it on there.
So-
The geography is one thing. The other thing is looking at the post office, because you have people that were on this one particular area of Egg Harbor Township, and that post office is listed way out. Quite. So that's not where they lived. You know where they lived, but it was the nearest, sometimes the nearest post office, which was not really where they were residing, because post offices changed. They might have been in one hamlet for a period of time and then moved to another hamlet in the same area. So it's not exact where they were living. It's that post office sometimes, and they'll list that post office at the top of the census.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they were in that town.
Genealogy isn't a science, it's an art. So it's done yet.
I'm just saying, the Egg Harbor Township and Egg Harbor City thing, I deal with every once in a while. I'll be working out on the road to the county and somebody wants someplace, and they're not sure if they want Egg Harbor. Ask them, are you asking for Egg Harbor Township or Egg Harbor City?
I don't know.
And I explain that here in Atlantic County, they're not like butted up. You go to Burlington County, Burlington City and Burlington Township butt up against each other, so it's not a big problem. You can easily get your 20-minute ride or better from parts of Egg Harbor Township to Egg Harbor City if you're in the wrong location.
And if you're trying to pin down a relative, it can be difficult. And the data that's on Ancestry, a lot of it will say Egg Harbor City, and it's the township.
Yes.
I guarantee you. Now, you've all seen the ads that Ancestry runs on TV. Oh, we have our little leaf. That's called a hint. Hints can drive you crazy on Ancestry because they think they're trying to help you, and maybe they are. But a lot of times you will get hints that are the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. You'll get you'll get a census for somebody that died 30 years before, only because the name matched. You'll get a complete other name, but the birth date matches, and you'll get a hint. You have to, unfortunately, spend a considerable amount of time culling through your hints and figuring out which ones are worthwhile keeping, which ones you want to ignore. And what's nice is now with the new system, if you ignore a hint, it doesn't go away. It goes into an ignored folder on that person, and if later on you go, wait a minute, I think I shouldn't have ignored that, you can bring it back so you don't lose it. But it does take time. You really have to spend time going through all of these hints. And there's always one hint for everybody, and they call it a person hint, which means they're on somebody's family tree. And as more and more people put that person on their family tree, you continue to get new hints. It just grows and grows and grows. So if you don't keep on top of the hints, they'll just bury you. And you'll just throw your hands up and say, forget it. But they are useful. Like I said, you have to go and look at it. You have to figure out, is it worthwhile? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to get rid of it? If you save it to a person on your tree, you can edit the data. Like, you may get a hint that's right, but it has the wrong name. It's a misspelled name. Or, in my case, those census that said commercial township. Once you save it to your tree, you can go in and edit the fields. So all I did was save the 30 census to my relative, went in, edited. I took out commercial township, put in Bridgeton, and it was done. So you can go in and massage the data. So these are just some of the things that I've run across. Like I said, I've only been doing this about 3 years, but it's been a ton of fun. I really have enjoyed doing it. I've learned a lot. I found my 5 times great-grandfather that allowed me to become a member of this organization. I got connected up with my great-grandfather who was in the Civil War. He was buried about 100 yards away from my grandfather, and my parents never bothered to tell me. Now, when I was in high school, I was a Civil War nut. Never once did my parents say, "Oh, your great-grandfather over there, he was in the Civil War. He was in the 24th New Jersey Infantry and was captured at Chancellorsville." Never knew that until I started doing this kind of stuff. So you can find out a whole bunch of things about your family, so it's a lot of fun. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Have you utilized the Ancestry DNA?
I am in the middle of that process right now. They've got my spit.
I did it, I don't know, maybe 9 months ago, and today I got an email from a girl living in Galloway who's a 4th cousin.
My wife did it. I was sort of, let me see what she gets. And after I saw the way that it works and what she got back, I thought, well, let me try it and see. So mine, they've received it. They give you a little thing that tells you where they are in the process. I haven't made it into the lab yet, so it's 3 weeks today, so I'm getting close.
I did the DNA about a year and a half ago, and I'd say I've met 10 cousins, up to a first cousin. That's really pretty interesting. But I use Ancestry a different way. I started out with only Family Tree Maker, software program, and started entering the data that I knew. Then I went to Ancestry, and I linked from Family Tree, then over to Ancestry that way. I don't start at Ancestry, and I only have maybe 50 ancestors in the Ancestry family tree. I work almost always from my Family Tree Maker.
And
go the other way.
what do you think is the benefit of doing that? Because I have everything in Ancestry. It's the tree and everything.
For me, I like to do family reports, genealogy, and I do all of that out of Family Tree Maker.
Okay.
Ancestry has just announced within the last 2 months that they are no longer going to produce Family Tree Maker. And after a certain period of time, a relatively short period of time, they're not going to offer upgrades to it or anything like that. Everything's going to...
Mac Kiev took it over.
Who?
Mac Kiev. It's a company that has taken over development of Family Tree Maker.
So it's going to come out as a different product now?
It's a smooth transition.
Okay.
If you already have it, your renewals and everything will come through Mac Kiev. They're the company that made the Mac version of Family Tree Maker. They are excellent programmers because I use a Mac. The very first version of the Mac Family Tree Maker, I could not find the login. That's the sign of a great company. They've now taken over the Windows version of Family Tree Maker, and it's all smooth. If you look for Family Tree Maker software, you'll go to the Mac Kiev site now.
Can I ask you a further question then?
Sure.
Will there be any way using Family Tree Maker under the new supplier to link to Ancestry, or is that...
Yes, the hint leaves are going to be exactly the same. They are exactly the same. But there's going to be a new thing. They're going to actually, Ancestry is going to develop an API and open it for other vendors. The API is an application program interface. Up to this point, you can only get green leaves if you use Family Tree Maker because it was Ancestry's product.
Correct.
Now it's a Mac Kiev product. You still get the green leaves through an API to Ancestry. Roots Magic will very soon have the equivalent of green leaves. And new companies will be able to buy into the API So new software will get Ancestry hints.
Well, that's a good thing, because I want to tell you,
So you're going to lose nothing. By Ancestry, in fact, it's exactly what I told them to do 5 years ago because I was fed up with Ancestry. I wrote publicly on a group advice to them. I said, why don't you get out of the software business because you aren't any good at it? They did that. And why don't you open up your API for other companies? They did that.
So what's the royalty you get from that, John?
Nothing.
So John, having Family Tree Maker, now this, I don't use it right now, but it would seem to me that it would be a much safer way to preserve your document, because if you're on Ancestry and you have a large tree, and like I've been able to get back into a lot of European records, particularly Northern Europe, you really have to keep up your membership in Family Tree, and Ancestry rather. And the Ancestry membership, if you have a world membership, is very pricey. It becomes, and now you pay, if you want that, then the guarantee.
$400, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and now, but it's now $8 a month, so that's another $100 a year for their backup system, where they guarantee that it will not be, if they have a glitch, they won't lose your stuff.
Yeah, well, there are various schools of thought on keeping your data and where. And I like to keep my data local on my computer. I have like 2,000 people in there. I know that I jumped to a few conclusions on some of the branches. I don't want to really put that all up on Ancestry because I know that some of it's bad, or I suspect some of it's bad. If I know it's bad, I'll take it out. But I suspect that some of it's bad. I don't want Ancestry to be replicating it and other people to be copying it if it's bad. Even if I make it semi-private, I still don't want it all up there. So I like to keep it private. Recently, I have put up my direct lineage because I now have Ancestry DNA, and putting your direct lineage, like my Yates line, for example, I put up there, and it's helped me find cousins and everything because of the way that Ancestry matches made and all. So, but that line I'm pretty sure of. So I put up the stub of my tree. The other thing that a Family Tree Maker program buys you is, like Earl was saying, you have great control. I have several dozen reports and charts that I can run, and I just select which chart, which people, which whatever, click on it, print it, and I'm done. When I go on the web, looking at the web trees is like horrible.
It's tough.
It's hard.
It's really
It's
tough.
hard.
Now, can
And there is since I don't know much about the synchronization, there is a way to synchronize your local tree with the tree on the web. Supposedly it's getting better. I've seen a lot of people complaining about it, that it breaks and it does this and does that. I don't know because I don't have experience. Theoretically, you should be able to synchronize so that any changes you make locally will appear on the web version and vice versa. Whether that works today, I don't know.
Now, can you copy directly from the web to TreeMaker?
Yes.
It's a direct copy over?
You can do a merge. If you find a document or a person, it's very easy. And I have 2010 Family Tree Maker, and I love it. I haven't upgraded in 2010. But I'm the same as John. I don't want my 1,800 family members up in Ancestry. I only want the ones I want to open up there. And I'm very happy with that process.
Yeah, I'm like John, I've got some that are questionable, and I always put in, right in on the birth box, that this is at best a guess, because of this, and this. I at least try to put a
Well,
reason
I fleshed
why.
out a lot of family trees from hints.
Yeah,
The hints are only, if they come from other public trees, they could be bad or they could be good. I only try to follow them if it looks reasonable and there's not a lot of conflicts. Sometimes I'll see that obviously they're talking about the same dates for different people. That's when I don't put it in my tree. I stop there. But if everybody agrees that the next ancestor is so-and-so, I'll put that in my tree because it's, it's higher than 90% sure.
That's
but it
where
isn't 100%.
that's where the auditor comes in.
The other, yeah.
Doubt everything
Yes.
until you can prove it.
You also have to remember that there was a time in the periods that families would duplicate names deliberately. I have in one of my ancestry files a Henry, who, when he was 18, fell from a mast of a ship and was killed. The next male child they had in the family, they named Henry. So you have to watch that.
And the other thing that you have to remember, there is nothing better than going to a historical society or a genealogical society to do some research. You get to touch and see and be with the real documents. Everything's cool online. You know, it's fast, it's neat, it's sexy if you want to go that far. But going out to a historical society and sitting down with the original documents, land deeds, court records.
Just so you know, to interrupt you, we're letting our waitress just go around and do what she has to do while we're continuing, because we don't want her to have to camp out here all night.
I think I'd like to let everybody know, if they do any Canadian research, I have a friend whose mother was born in Nova Scotia, and her name was Marie Euphemia, and her sister's name was Marie. So I asked her, I said, what happened? He said, well, where I was born, all the girls were named Mary, and all the boys were named John. And so in the families, all the girls had started off with Marie, and they went by a different middle name. So they totally ignored the first name and went by the middle name.
And we found in going back in time, a lot of people went by their middle name, not their first name.
That doesn't count out George Foreman.
No. Charlie, I just had a quick one that has nothing to do with my cousin's wife from Kentucky and her relatives Tennessee, you know, the nebulous corner where they transfer boundaries every couple of years. Never really knew much about her family, didn't think anybody would ever know anything. Her husband's retired, he has Ancestry.com, international, this and that. Started working on her line, and she did the DNA test, which showed so much from the UK area that was absolutely a shock. With his international subscription, he really kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Last fall, they took a 3-week planned trip with planned places, different places where the original documents were. It was unbelievable what this country girl found. Are cemeteries, cathedrals, towns, church from the year 1000 with great big plaques on it with her ancestors' name. Her ancestors buried under the aisle of the church. Just pager after pager that they did their homework before they went over there, and it was an experience of a lifetime for her, because everybody was waiting. They knew they were coming from the United States, and they had all kinds of documents and history for her, all the way back there.
That is
It was
cool.
such a beautiful, beautiful thing for her.
That is neat.
That'll never be me.
Another thing I think people might be interested in is they do Scandinavian research. My mother's father's parents were born in Norway, and when their cousin went searching for records, they discovered that the parish records of the church are extremely good, because they write down all their members, they write down their member's name and where they moved to. You can go to that location and look at that parish record, and they'll tell you when they arrived and if they moved, where they moved to. It's very good for tracing down your family.
I think that was a very common thing in Europe. The church would say, you know, they moved from here and went to this location. So they did a lot better keeping track of people than we did over here.
And by the way, you can get into Roman Catholic records in Philadelphia. I talked to a priest friend of mine, and I said, why do I have such a hard time getting these? And he explained to me that the official position, well, official but not made highly public, the position of the Roman Catholic Church, is they don't cooperate with Ancestry. And the reason is they had a lot of their Mormon members, which of course is the genesis of Ancestry, and going back and searching back to relatives and going through that baptism for the dead kind of thing that they were going through. And they really got kind of insulting about it. And so in the United States, at least, the Catholic position very quickly became, we're not cooperating. But you can in Philadelphia and get into some records. If you go on the Archdiocese website, they will show you what can. It's an expensive search, by the way. I had a whole search done on my great-grandmother and her husband and her children. Now, if you've ever gotten an email from me, I have a disclaimer notice at the bottom. That's a clergy disclaimer notice. And they saw that, and I had been referred by a priest, and they made the assumption that I was a Roman Catholic priest. And so they write me back, Father, we've done all this for you. Now, but as my friend explained to me, they said, I called him and I said, I've just become Father Goss instead of Pastor Goss. And he said, well, that won't help you when they get ready to bill you. He said, they don't discriminate there. But there's an interesting, they're really starting to make some of the stuff available too, but you have to go through them, and it's a slow process because you get in line and it can take weeks and weeks for them to get to your inquiry. Now, I've just asked Earl, and I whispered something to John, and in the fall, I think what we're going to do is one of these nights, and we'll advertise it again for all of our DAR friends, we're going to have a presentation done, not a technical presentation, but a how-to with regard to this Ancestry family search interface and how that can be done. And Earl, just when you do that, could you kind of also include in that a price comparison, if you would, just so people know what it should cost them?
Yeah, nothing is, Ancestry is the most expensive, and what I do is I let it lapse, and I let it lapse for a while, and after about 3 months, they get into a frenzy and start sending me emails, taking $10 off every time. So I'm not